Welcome to the August 18th, 2011 meeting of the Fayetteville Telecommunication Board. And the first thing is call to order. I think I just did that. Now the roll call. Would you please say your name so I can write it down? I don't have a sign-up check-off sheet. Who's here? Come over here.
Michael Spencer.
Spencer. Yes, sir.
Russ Davis.
Davis. Shepherd. And please.
Blake Pennington.
This is actually nice. The public can hear.
Stephen Smith.
Mike Eric.
Maybe you guys want to do that forever. Just have everybody introduce themselves. Some committees do that, and it's kind of neat rather than call it roll like you're in grammar school or something. Okay. Anybody read the July meeting minutes? Do I have a motion to approve? Or
I have not seen them.
I don't think they've been included in our packet yet.
I have to apologize for that, gentlemen. We've been very short-staffed. I have a staff member who's been out on vacation for 2 weeks and another staff member who has been hospitalized for the last week. And so I apologize for the fact that those minutes did not get to you in this packet.
Who's hospitalized? Do you mind telling us?
At this point in time, because of medical information,
privacy.
I'd rather do
Okay.
that right.
Well,
I move we table approval until
next meeting.
next meeting.
Okay, we table that. And how about the agenda? You're looking at it. Do I have a motion on that? Did we? Okay, it has not been added in. Where would you like to add in Susan Norton's report for Fayetteville or from Fayetteville Public School? It's in our packet.
I would move that we add it to in between points 4 and 5.
Okay. Okay.
I move approval of the agenda as amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, did I hear a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, old business, none. New business. It's the annual August election of chairman. So we're open for nominations, please. And it will be a vice chairman re-elected or new elected after this.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Pennington as the chair.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Any discussion? Then all in favor of electing Mr. Pennington chairman, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Guess what? I was going to do this last year, but is this your copy?
Oh, yes.
What's nice for other copies? All right.
I'd like to thank Mr. Shepherd for his chairmanship of the board over the last, 14 months that I've been on the board, and it's been longer than that, so.
Yeah, I think I joined the board at the beginning of, was it 08? Anyway, I've been on the board 3.5 years and chairman for 2.5, I believe. So
You're here.
it's time to be out of that seat.
We'll move on to nominations for vice chair of the Telecommunications Board. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Mr. Davis.
I actually have some other obligations coming up at the end of October, so I would prefer to not be nominated for that position.
Okay, well you're it. You have to nominate now.
So I would actually nominate Mr. Smith as the vice chair.
Second that nomination.
Mr. Smith accept the nomination?
I suppose so. I've had some cards printed up and I have a short speech I'd like to read.
Any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, all in favor of Mr. Smith being elected Vice Chair of the Telecommunications Board, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Smith, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think. All
I'll
right.
let you determine that.
Next, we'll move into appointment or reappointment of committees. I believe we have two committees. One was the Complaint Policy and Procedure Subcommittee. I believe that committee has ended its usefulness, I guess, at least for now. So
Its purpose.
it has fulfilled its purpose. So the only other committee I'm aware of is the Internet Subcommittee. And who are the members of that? I know Mr. Spencer.
I don't know who else is signing off because done everything I wasn't.
You were appointed chair of that when you were not present.
Are you okay continuing in that capacity?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Any other members of the board would like to join the Internet Subcommittee?
I just have a point of information. I'm new to this. What's our charge with regard to the internet?
At this point, I don't think we know.
There isn't a
There's
charge
not one.
from the city council specifically. Okay, I think it's one of those topics that we're exploring and hoping to delve into.
Yeah, that was, I mean, we came up last time about having a meeting, and I mean, there's no point in having a meeting until we actually know what we're looking at. And I don't think there's any areas actually of internet that need to, I mean, that we've actually opened up for discussion yet.
I think some of the areas that we had talked about exploring would be beyond just like the telecommunication side and exploring just the communication side via the internet, such as how we communicate with the city of Fayetteville, whether it be through social media, Twitter, Facebook, and those sorts of areas, and kind of exploring how this board can make an impact on those areas of it. So I think that's kind of what the idea was and what we thought could be explored, but nothing's really been nailed down at this time.
Subtle usurpation, right?
Just suggestion. All right. Anybody else interested in joining the committee? I'll write myself down for it.
Okay, on your previous thing, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mhm.
we're looking on the agenda at a report from the Complaint Procedure Committee. And one of the things that committee, is to bring forth is a document. And until we have voted for it or not,
Mhm.
or revised it or whatever that discussion may result in, I'm not sure we should declare that committee dead at this point. And as Mr. Bemis pointed out in the subcommittee meeting, when it was last held, what was that, a week ago, on what day was that? Anyway, Wednesday or whatever, or 2 Wednesdays ago. Anyway, those who haven't seen it can review it on YouTube, of course, but part of his point was that at a much earlier meeting, when some of you hadn't joined this
Point of order.
board yet,
Which item are you speaking on?
on the committee, the committee on
The
policy
reappointment
and
of committees.
complaint,
All right.
yeah. So,
Yeah, your point is well taken. I agree that there may be some issues that have to be readdressed by the committee, so it would be premature to
I wouldn't call
dissolve.
it dead, but I would say that, well, I guess we can ask the question again, is there
Mhm.
a need to, do we want to reappoint anyone as far as the committee goes?
The members of the committee were me, Mr. Davis, and Mr. Eric, who came last week. And
If there's any motion for change on that, then.
I mean, if anybody would like to.
Can we keep it, I mean, it's kind of like the internet, I mean, it can work as needed, but,
Mhm.
I mean, until there's actually areas that need to mean, there's,
The question would be, do we want to reappoint or change anybody on that committee at this time?
Does anybody wish to be added to the committee? If not, then we'll leave it at those three for now, and if it gets charged with something in the future, we can always change the makeup or the charge of the committee.
That's fair enough.
Mr. Chairman, as you look at your committee, the members of your committees, please keep in mind that the administrative rules state that any committee will have no more than 3, since 4 constitutes a quorum, and no committee can constitute a quorum of the entire board, so you can only have a maximum of 3 members.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me of that. So if nobody else was interested in the internet committee, then I will close that with Mr. Spencer and myself. Anything else as far as committees go? If not, we'll move on to number 3 in new business, which is the Television Center and the Government Channel Report. Mr. Giesler.
Thank you, sir. Well, last meeting I talked about the second quarter numbers and how those were, where we were on that. We're, as a government channel, we continue to fulfill the mission that the administration has given us. One of the things that, as I said earlier in the meeting just a moment ago, that we have run into is a staffing issue because of our couple of staff members. That happens. I mean, you have people that get sick and you have people that are on vacation and such. And I just wanted to reiterate to this board is when that does happen, because of the way our policies are written, meeting production comes first. So any non-meeting production that might be in a pipeline, when we get into a situation where staffing might get short, that the meetings are prioritized and the non-meeting production gets delayed. So there's some things that happen like that sometimes, but just to reiterate that. Since last month, we've had a few things at the Television Center of interest to share. One of the things that we've done is we've updated some of our field production equipment. That's going to help streamline some of the workflows of the city staff. Primarily and specifically with the technology, we now have all of our field cameras no longer use videotape. They all record on solid state devices. 2 of them actually record in a file format that's native to our editing systems, Final Cut Pro, which allows those files that are recorded on the cameras to just be taken straight in with no transcoding. It's a big time saver. Wow. And we've eliminated the ongoing cost of videotape because videotape wears out. It's one of those ongoing costs. Everything wears out eventually, but the solid state recording media will be much more durable and last longer. We looked at what we needed to do in terms of what our needs were, and of course our priority being meetings and our second priority being actual field video production for non-meeting things would require a certain higher level of production values. We saved some money on one of the cameras by purchasing a camera that was still has the same some of the same features. It was much less expensive because it has the features that we need to do meetings with, but not a lot of the features that we need or the quality that we need to do field production, non-meeting production. And then we took some of the money that we saved and spent a little bit more money on a very high quality field production camera. One of the things that has resulted from this, and is some of the things that I'll talk about in a minute, and get as deep into it as you would like this evening, and talking about future plans. But we have, as I'm sure all of you know, our telecasting is all done in standard definition. And all standard definition is done at a particular aspect ratio on the television. It's what we call 4:3 is the ratio of the picture size. However, our production is a separate operation from our telecasting, and one of the things that we're trying to do as we go forward is respond to what the industry is doing with technology. And one of the things that we're finding out as we go forward is standard definition analog equipment is disappearing. People don't make it anymore. Manufacturers make very little of it. So it's difficult to find, and some of the stuff that we do find is very expensive. So trying to figure out how we're going to move away from that. We're trying to do it in a very cost-effective manner, and this one step that we did recently with the field production is a step in that direction. The production that the government channel does now in the field, the production is in high definition. And what that means is essentially the cameras that we have won't record in standard definition. To get the quality of equipment that we need, we just don't, it's just not available. Standard def cameras just aren't available anymore. So we do have to do some what we call transcoding, but the production flow from camera to final product has been streamlined because we're not doing it in the middle of that process, we're doing it at the end. And we're taking advantage of the editing systems that the City Council allowed us to invest in last year by taking advantage of all the features that we can find within those systems to streamline this process. And we've been able to get to a point where one of the things that we have to do is when we produce a meeting, for example, this meeting here, it'll be recorded on that camera over there on a solid state media. It'll be taken into an editing system. Graphics will be added. If, as people watch the government channel, they'll see coming up on the lower third every 3 minutes is a graphic that says what the meeting is and what the date is, and that allows people to know, well, what is it that I'm watching here, and that has to be done in what we call post-production. And then it has to be put in proper formats for archive and for telecast and for distribution on our video on demand system. We've been able to maximize the use of our technology, so that's done in a way that once the graphics and such are added to the program, those things are done all at one time. So all 3 of those formats, all an operator has to do is basically push one button and walk away and go do something else while the machine does the work. And when he comes back, those 3 formats are ready to go where they need to go. DVD archive, video on demand for Granicus, for our viewers on the internet, and then also for telecast. Our telecasting system, by necessity at this point in time, is standard definition, so we do have to do that transcoding there. So we made that change in the field production, and it's going to help save us some time in that process as we go forward. I can't remember if I mentioned this last month, but we placed an order for another channel controller. At this point in time, we have one automated channel controller that runs both channels. Unfortunately, if something happens to that system, we'll lose both channels off the air. So we are going to add a second controller that allows both channels, the channels to be operated independently. So if we have an unfortunate incident where one of the controllers goes down, we will have the other channel won't go off the air, and we'll be able to put in place a disaster recovery and backup plan. We should have that by the next month's meeting. I should be able to report on that having been installed. One of the significant things that I was not able to include in the agenda because it happened since the agenda was distributed, but I've been working with the Chief of Staff and the Director of Communications for several months, and our HR department for several months. I'll give you a little background on what I'm talking about. When I was brought in, I was given this position, Chief of Staff Don Marr tasked me with looking at the operations of the television center from all perspectives, from technology, from communication perspective, from service perspective, and also from an administrative perspective. And one of the things that I had to do is develop what plans we were going to follow in terms of what needed attention first, what could be done later, after identifying the issues that needed to be dealt with. One of the issues that we identified almost immediately was that the structure of the organization wasn't as probably the best structure for a production and telecasting operation. My experience in the business has shown that particular organizational structures work a little bit better than others. We also had issues with the job descriptions themselves, and working with the Human Resources Division pointed out some issues that we had with the job descriptions as they existed then. Because we had some issues that were more important or higher priority to deal with, from the operations standpoint, we dealt with those first, and then we were able to get to a place where we were able to deal with these organizational issues. It was a several month process. The first thing I did was rewrite all the job descriptions in the organization. And working with the chief of staff and the director of communications, my job description was rewritten, and then I rewrote the job descriptions for the other positions in the new organization. We also created a new table of organization, which I'll hand out to you now, that shows how the new organization is established. When you look at this, you'll see some of the boxes are dark gray. Those are positions that are not filled at this time, and because of budget issues and where we are with the city, we don't have any particular plans to fill those. Hopefully, in the years to come, as things loosen up a little bit, we'll be able to start filling some of these vacant positions. Steve Odom was promoted from a video production position to programming coordinator. That position was created new because we had essentially someone who had a position description as a production technician doing the programming. So we created a programming coordinator position, and since Steve was the one who was fulfilling those duties, it just made sense that he be put in that position. Also, as you see, we also have full-time production technicians and one part-time. We have 4.25 what they call full-time equivalents in the government channel division, and that includes myself. So me, Fru Gallagher's a video production technician, Neil Billy is a video production technician, and Steve Odom. Those are our 4 full-time. And then Tyrone Rogers is a part-time staff member, and he works 10 hours a week. That's the quarter full-time equivalent. So that's where we are organizationally. And I would tell you, gentlemen, that we are pretty much at our capacity in terms of what we're doing. As things go forward, if the City Council or the administration or the Telecommunications Board sees a need for the government channel staff, the television center staff, to expand what we're doing, we're going to really have to look at whether we can hopefully add another position somewhere along the line. And as this grows, we'll be looking at that.
Would you add the position or just take it from part-time to full-time?
That would be the first thing I would like to do. And just small steps. Small steps are usually the best way to go. And we're going to we're really close to a point where we're going to have to decide what's going to be better the next person to hire, either an engineer, because our installation and our technology is getting to the point where it's going to be beyond the capability of I share those duties right now with Mr. Bilby. We kind of both, he has some strengths in some areas of it, I have strengths in other areas, and we've been able to manage very well up till now. But it's going to be a coin toss probably between a full-time video production technician and an engineer after we probably go full-time on that position.
Do you see an immediate need for that?
Where we're going, since 2009, there have been 2 major things that the television center staff has taken responsibility for that they didn't have before. One is the video on demand services, and that was previously managed through the IT department. And since we generate all the content and we are the division that does communicate through video for the administration, and we are the people that do all that, it made sense that we take over the responsibility for that. So that's one thing that we've added. The second thing that we've added is a responsibility for what we call digital signage. The administration has expressed a desire to slowly expand that. The vision is that someday...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, what did you call it?
Digital signage.
Well, what would that be?
That would be a, for example, rather than using a hardboard, we have a digital display like down in the lobby that shows where the meetings are, what times they are. It's done with a digital display that's easily changed as opposed to a hardboard where you have to go in there and change the letters. Just think of a sign, but it's a
something like downstairs in this building.
that is what is in the City Hall lobby and also in the District Court lobby. Those are our 3 digital signage installations that we have right now.
I'm sorry, I think my problem was the word signage. I'm not
Okay.
familiar with it. It's a sign, digital.
Yeah, it's a sign on a LCD display.
Yeah.
But it's easily changed, and we can add also hypermedia elements to it, like video, text, and RSS feeds, where we could actually stream weather information, various things like that. The vision is to, hopefully within before 5 years, is to have at least one digital signage installation in every place that the public has interaction with the city, and that would include places like the lobby of the police department, the animal services building, the lobby of the television center, and places like that. Because it's a very efficient way to communicate information to the public in a manner which they have the opportunity to see it. They're going to be there, and a lot of times we have people waiting in line to pay their water bill, and it's available and it's accessible to them. And there is been some ideas tossed about that we could actually even do some outdoor installations, like on trails and in parks.
If it didn't violate our sign ordinance.
If it didn't violate our sign ordinance. But those are some of the things that we're talking about. Those are 2 things that have been added to the television center staff's responsibilities in the last 2 years. We have been able to take on those responsibilities because of the efficiencies that we have realized through technology, the investment that we've made in technology, and our workflows, and making those more efficient. And then the third thing that we're looking at is just where we're going in terms of what the city needs for audiovisual support. AV support for rooms like this. When you have projection, you have audio, you have microphones and things like that. Room 219, which is our city council chambers, is in some significant need of some updating in its presentation technology, and so that's something else that we'll probably be looking at in terms of taking responsibility for, because we have the background for that, and the people that work in the television center, on the television center staff, that's more in our area to manage those kinds of things. And a lot of times they interact, the AV systems in a room will interact with the video systems. For example, all the microphones you see here go to a system in the back of the room, and that system not only does the sound reinforcement for the rooms so people can hear better, but it also feeds the audio to the camera that's recording the meeting, and so those kinds of things can interact. So
Is that currently supported by the IT department? Or?
it's in transition right now,
Okay.
actually. So those are things that we're looking at. But that is the change in our table of organization and how our staff organization in the city administration was a very significant change that happened in the administration of the television center. So I wanted to share that with you, and a little bit about future plans. The next thing that I would tell you about is that we do still have an open position on this board, and it's been being advertised. I think we have, the city clerk has said that we've had one application so far. The deadline for applications to be a member, considered to be a member of the Telecommunications Board is August 26th. So if anybody has an interest, or if you know of anybody that has an interest in serving on the board, I encourage them to get an application in to the city clerk's office. And I would think that by September's meeting, we'll have a new member chosen. Questions? Sir?
One of the things that we're charged to do is advise the city council on things. And I would like to be able to make a recommendation that we increase the production technician from part-time to full-time. Is that consistent with your needs for next year?
Absolutely.
The other was, you were discussing about the analog versus digital. What would be the next equipment that, would that be the priority, or do you have other things that would be a priority?
The thing that we're really trying to determine right now is, when is this going to go away completely? There's been a lot of talk in the industry about what they call the sunset of analog, and that it's going to disappear completely. And we are already running into some issues with that. Right now, I'm working on a plan to be able to present to the board for your consideration. If it is okay with this board, I would like to, now the city's already gone through the operational budget process for 2012. So I'm not anticipating to be able to significantly, if at all, increase the television center's operational budget for next year. But as we go forward, I'd like an opportunity to possibly have a special meeting of the Telecommunications Board just to present a plan that I would like for all of you to consider as you might have. And then you can ask questions about it, where we're going to go with it, and what we're considering to be the best road to the future, and then be able to.
I guess we have to wait and see if there's going to be sales tax revenue.
Well, that's
before we make any recommendation. But when you do production work for other departments in the city, do you do training videos or special things they request with them? Do you charge those to those departments and then bring that in for your operating budget?
No, sir. We have no chargeback structure in place.
Is there any reason why you don't? Or, I mean,
It's never been there, and I don't know how extensive a process it would be to create something like that. It would be a pretty intensive process, I believe, to actually create something. I know building services does things like
sure.
that. So it's just never been considered in the past.
Could you, you don't have to do it by the next meeting, but sometime in the next few months, give some thought to a proposal that we might recommend on that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how much of your time and it's taking to do it, but
I'm sure there's a way to figure out market value based off of what, if the city were to call in a third party to do that work, as to what it would cost, even if it's discounted beyond.
I bet
that.
your media could tell us what the market rates are.
$180 an hour for video production.
Excuse me?
I do know that one of the things that we would have to look at from that perspective is that then we would have to be working with the other departments, and they would have to budget that money into their operational budgets, and how that would have an impact on them for that kind of work. And would it have a detrimental effect on how they might want to go forward right now, if it doesn't cost the planning department or the strategic planning department anything for the television center to produce some promos for the City Plan 2030 input sessions, and that is something that they can get done. It doesn't have an impact on their budget. Would they do that if it would have an impact on their budget, or would they just dismiss that?
If they didn't, then you could get things like the minutes done.
Does the communication department do they do chargeback for clients?
No. And one of the things that's happened is that, in 2009, Mayor Jordan took office and the administration at that time changed dramatically in some ways. And he changed the structure of the city administration. And so I was hired in April of 2009, and then Ms. Smith was hired as Director of Communication in August. There'd never been a Director of Communication per se, in a communication department per se, in the city administration before 2009. So structure changes, culture changes, how we define those positions, and how that works in with all the other departments is something that even now, 2 years later, we're still making adjustments and things, trying to move forward with a lot of those things. But a lot of it's very different having a department of communications in the administration's culture.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Geisler? If not, we will move on to the next point, which is the Fayetteville Public Access Television Report from Ms. Ann Shelley.
Thank you. It's good to be here. July was a notably average month. And one of the things that if you'll notice, that I added to the reports this month was a monthly average for the figures, so that from here forward we can sort of compare each individual month to what the monthly average is. One of the most important things I see that we need to do this year, which is pretty much a inaugural year for this approach to such a purpose of training, is to keep good track of all the figures so that we can have averages at the end of the year to help us in our future contract negotiations, and also in doing what's best for the city and where we need to improve our operations. So one good thing that we saw that was not average was we had a very large decrease in the number of no-shows or cancellations this month. We're not sure what the magic ingredient for that was. The flip side of that is, for the first time ever, we had three producers or three trainees that were on the verge of getting candidate producer status that were unable to, at the last minute, complete the coursework. So that had never happened before. So instead of what we anticipated as 5 new candidate producers for this month, we ended up with 2. It's our hope that those 3 will be able to come back and finish, so that we will be in good standing. That would have put us at exactly where we needed to be for our quota of 15 for this quarter, had those 3 completed their course. And I want to also, though it's not in this report because it technically happened the first part of August, apparently the Mayor Jordan posted on his Facebook about Fayetteville Public Access Television, and that resulted directly in, we will have 4 new candidate producers by the end of August because of his just doing that. So I challenge each and every one of you, if you have a Facebook account, and people do listen, to just post Fayetteville Public Access on your Facebook account. What a great way for someone who has a circle of influence, his being of course the whole city, to reach out, and it's certainly free advertising for this great service that the city provides. So we can briefly look through this, and then I actually do have some updates that are on the report that I'd like to spend more time with. If you look at monthly averages, pretty much again, the workshop participants was about average, though what we did see for the first time, if you remember, there's always been a huge trend of Ward 4 users at the public access. They were like virtually absent this month for some reason. I don't know if there's like something going on in Ward 4 in July. But Ward 2 picked up the slack, and we're really glad to see that ward kind of standing out in both number of program requesters and also in participants by ward. As far as just organizational highlights for your media, we did our first ever media empowerment project at the end of July, doing media training for 20 Afghan women who were here through the U.S. Department of State program that was housed at Spring International, which was really an incredible thing to be able to work with them. As part of that, we extended the invitation that we do with Spring International students to come and also tour the Fayetteville Public Access television facility and telecast their own show. So that should be telecasting this week. We also, last month in July, had Iraqi students, and we're working now to put together a promo about the station based on their words. They had probably the above average English skills for the international students that we get, and the fact that they were here from Iraq and being able to do this kind of thing with such a theme of freedom and independence, it's been a great couple of months at Public Access as far as just really understanding from a world perspective what a gift public access is to this community. So we have our next board meeting next Wednesday. We have 2 really great board candidates up for elections. I'm excited about that. Carmen Cousteau, who is recently the Vice Chancellor of Diversity at the university, and now teaches in the journalism department. She has her master's from Harvard and has done documentary filmmaking. She serves along with us on the libraries. What are they calling that? For the documentary that they're doing, the series through the library that we're on the steering committee for.
Oh, that's the Your Fayetteville Story.
Right.
Or
So
My
we
Fayetteville.
serve with her on a steering committee, and also Jan McCormick, who is a local entrepreneur who does a lot of work with job development and owns a company called Job Lingo. She also has her doctorate in education. So we're getting really great quality people drawn to our organization. We've opened our offices at 34 East Center Street, and at the first week of August, completed our first Through Your Eyes Kids Media Project, a kids video camp for ages 9 through 12. So that's sort of what we're doing outside of public access, and getting back to inside public access. The interesting thing, if you look at page 2, though July looked a little below average on some levels, it actually exceeded May and June, or was very even with May and June, I mean, as far as the number of participants in class. And that the chart is actually on page 3. So far we've had March and April being our largest class participant months. And I don't know that anyone would have guessed that starting the year. I think we all thought summer would really have a lot more participation because people were more free and able to take classes, but we're not finding that trend to be true. If you look at new trainees and producers, also on number 3, again, we're pretty much average, though we did bring in some new outside producers, which I think that's, again, one of the places that we can do a lot of outreach, is getting people who are already making good videos to bring them into the station to telecast. You'll see the names of our 2 new candidate producers. Thanks again to Lindsley and Stephen Smith for joining the great ranks. Yay! And I got great feedback from our class participants on our Director of Education and his abilities to teach those courses. So I look forward to your shows being produced at some point. Short takes were a little bit below average, but again, we didn't do any of the outreach short take filming at any of the farmers markets that had really kind of boosted those numbers up. Equipment utilization, the 2 places that are obviously lower than average would be our Edit Bay 5, but we noticed that there was a trend, and when we train new producers, we typically use Edit Bay 5 in which to train them, and producers kind of tend to get a favorite Edit Bay, and so everybody was wanting to go back to that one. But over the last couple of months, JR made a concerted effort not to just stay in that bay, and we think that's a little bit of why people aren't in that bay, but also we just see that there's a lower number of new programs in general. Some of the typical producers that have been using that bay on a regular basis haven't been very active this summer. And the studio number is way down, but as I talked about last month, I'm sorry, 2 of our live studio producers, especially one, Chris Harlow, have discontinued taping live shows, so that's why that number has completely fallen. Any questions about the actual report for July before I head into some of the new information?
Quick question on page 2. It just mentions about your board met and they amended the bylaws. Were
Correct.
there any significant changes?
The most significant change, actually, I think it was maybe 3 months ago that I went over this when we were first looking at that, but the previous bylaws that were the bylaws under CAT, our old organizational name, had an entire section on producers' rights, which really had no place in the bylaws. It was certainly a part of that old paradigm and that old sense that somehow our organization had ownership of public access television, which is not the case at all. So that entire section has been taken out. And then just a few other minor things, just some changes in the standing committees and just making them more in line with how sustainable nonprofits bylaws look. I'd be happy to forward those to you without any problem. Yeah. I'll
Would you mind sending those to the committee members, the board members?
Be happy to. Yeah, I'll make sure that you get those before, or by the end of the week.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, refer to the one complaint.
Yes.
The person said, I think it would be great if some of the older or outdated equipment could be kept for archival material use so that historic footage could be accessed. I can imagine a lot of people might want to use their position as producers to actually go back and gather things off the old formats of video. And I've done some of that myself, but most people are not going to buy the equipment to convert those or take the time. But if it can be done at the studio somewhere in Fayetteville, that you don't have to pay buku bucks, that would be nice. No telling what it costs to get one of these shops to do it, to give us those things.
We maintain at the television center, we have quite a collection of older equipment, and what I'm thinking is what they're primarily referring to is VHS and SVHS videotape machines. We can't get them repaired anymore, so as they become non-operational, they're going to be disposed of. But as we go forward, we're keeping as much as we can from that standpoint. That equipment is there and it's available. It's actually, we have it's being used every day because both the government channel staff and public access staff are continuing to convert old archive footage that's been on VHS and SVHS to DVD. So that is available.
That's wonderful, because those won't all go away for a while, and the historians will be looking at, how do I read this? How do I watch it? Thank you for that.
Other than the mayor's Facebook page, do you have other outreach programs for target groups that you think would be potential users and get the information?
Yeah, actually, we just sent to the printer the insert card for the water bill. So that is completely in the works now and should be happening soon. And this week, Heather Drain, our operations manager, is perusing a list. We have a list of about 300, area nonprofits. And she's going to come up with the top 25 that we do specific outreach to, looking for things such as, are there groups that have a large constituency in Fayetteville that would have someone able to come and take the classes and learn how to do it. So we are in the process of doing some concerted outreach to targeted groups in the Fayetteville area over this next month.
Okay, well, the city has just set up a deal called Community Links.
Yeah, I'm aware of that through Julie, and I have that on my list to contact her as well.
That might be a good place to contact nonprofits, because I think a lot of volunteers and things are.
Right, and that is one of the underutilized ways that, or one way we need to get the word out more. Nonprofit groups or even political organizations, this is just a perfect gift for them. So we are going to focus on group efforts in our outreach over the next month or two. All right, the other update that I have, which I mentioned, I believe, a couple of months ago, I wanted to let you know, is we have officially stopped web streaming through Granicus. And that is due to, first and foremost, it's cost prohibitive. Secondly, it's not a contractual obligation of ours. And third, usage of the web streaming was so low. I wasn't given an exact number, but I'm paraphrasing our Granicus representative. He said, "Oh my goodness, you haven't had any activity." So and they were about to raise the price. It's $324 a month to web stream. They were going to raise it to $380, which is an annual cost of $4,560, which is, you know, that's a part-time staff member for public access television. And we just can't, as an organization, provide that service anymore. We can't justify affording the cost of doing so. So I wanted to officially make that notice.
So have you got alternatives in mind?
One of the things that we see as the best alternative is a lot of producers are currently uploading their own videos to YouTube. In fact, JR teaches that as part of the editing class, how to do that. And we have already made one initial contact to an expert in the field. We're hoping in October to do offer a workshop on uploading YouTube and the benefits and the ins and outs of it. We see that as the best alternative at this point.
Do you think that as the operator of the public access channel that we can explore the possibility of creating a YouTube channel specifically for Fayetteville Public Access Television?
I think that's great. I'm happy to have us look into that. Yeah, makes more sense. And again, I think it's a great idea. It's wonderful to be able to say you can watch my public access station or our television show worldwide, and the usage just isn't there. And certainly our focus to being more of a training venue than, I mean, we certainly televise what we do. That's the goal of it, but the goal is to get people to make the shows to televise.
It's a perfect example of the internet subcommittee.
Yeah.
Get that thing rolling.
Well, if I may, we do have a printed report. Nobody from public school here today. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a motion?
Oh, I have more.
Okay,
Is this related to what I'm
just
talking
what
about?
you just
Okay.
talked about.
Okay.
When we get to this other thing, to the reason that brought it up, they are now live streaming from the public school system, and we might want to explore what way they're doing it and see if they found a better way. May have to do with what their new website may have that capability, and they're using it.
And I imagine it has to do with their operating budget too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I will find that out. The other thing is again, it's been quite a pleasure to work with Fritz on some of the ways that we're looking at operationally how we can change this to make public access better for all Fayetteville residents. And we just changed the series programming schedule policy. That's right after my report in your packet. And this will be implemented September 1st. We currently have 17 series time slots. Some of them have not been very active, and frankly, we didn't even have a good policy on when do you no longer allow a series to be a series. We've had, for example, Mr. Harlow, I spoke about how prolific he was in his live shows, but then he was unable to find a director to continue those, but he still had a series slot in the program schedule, so his series was still playing, though it had live information from 4, 5, 6 months ago. So we've been looking at all of those things, and in essence, as of September 1st, we will be starting a 12-hour rotating program schedule for everything that telecasts on public access television. So from the schedule from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. will repeat again from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. And each series producer, if they meet the requirements outlined in this policy, who are granted a series time slot, will pick one time, such as 6 a.m. So that means on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That means their series will telecast at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. 6 plays a week, that's it. Then you could also pick a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday slot. Saturday will be we will no longer telecast any series program. It will be one place where we will showcase all new programs for that particular week. And then, of course, there will be replays throughout the week of all things. We've already notified all of the series producers and have heard back from 2 of the longest-running local producers, Richard Drake and Chuck Roberts, already, that have picked their time slot. No problem with this transition. Actually, they seem to think it was a better way of doing it based on their initial email replies. So I'm really excited about that. It kind of, if you had looked at about 2 months ago, I think we started looking at this, first of all, just trying to better manage the somewhat of a monster that scheduling public access programming is. When you look at, we might get a 30-second show to a 5-minute, 42-second show to a 4-hour show, and then trying to do series in there as well. And approaching the series programming policy in a way that stays true to the integrity of our first come, first served, non-discriminatory policy for all programming. And to go from there to being able to streamline it to 12 hours and repeat, we think is better not only for the producers, certainly for internally for us in scheduling, but also for the viewers of public access. So,
if we work on making a more stable, predictable program schedule for the viewer, that will help viewership. It also helps them, the operator internally, because it makes it a whole lot more efficient. People, the operator doesn't have to spend as much time actually in the process of where is this program going to go where. Mature audience content in the series program policy, as Ann said, programming repeats. A 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. block will repeat from noon to midnight, with the exception of mature audience content. That only is telecast between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. So from that perspective, if it is a mature audience content program that has a series slot, then in terms of equitability, those will be telecast sometime between, whatever that slot is, between midnight and 6, Sunday through
I can't stay up that late.
Sunday through Friday.
you miss all the good stuff.
If
You see it on YouTube.
More stable, then you can, then viewers can use their DVRs and things like that. So that's, we're real excited about this in terms of what it's going to do. And it has a real broad impact and positive impact in a lot of ways. So. The other thing that I'll roll into, if it's all right with you, we also looked at the policies. We had a couple of questions from you last, Mr. Smith, last meeting about a couple of the policies regarding a call to action, specific language about a call to action, and also language about how Fayetteville Public Access Television reserves the right to not telecast a message board. What we did was we completely eliminated the call to action verbiage whatsoever. We looked at it, realized it was pretty much out of context for what it was trying to accomplish, and that there was other language in the policies that already accomplished that. So we just eliminated that completely. The statement about reserving the right to not telecast a message board request, we were looking at that, and rather than reserving the right to not telecast something at all, the reasoning behind that was originally if something would have been in violation of the policies in terms of content. So we took that and we rolled it into, in your packet, you'll see one page of the Fayetteville Public Access Television Policies, page 8, and it says that Fayetteville Public Access Television reserves the right to edit or otherwise revise the submitted information for reasons of clarity, space, and other considerations that violate Fayetteville Public Access Television policies. So we feel like we're not reserving the right to completely, no, we're not going to telecast that, but we are still maintaining that if something is submitted that could violate the policies, we're not obligated to telecast that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as it's, there's some written policy to compare it to rather than just the whim of.
Yeah.
Yes, and we definitely saw that as being an issue, and we really appreciate you bringing that to the attention so we could modify this.
And I appreciate you working that out on both of those.
And that's all that I have, unless there are other questions.
Anything else from Ms. Shelley?
Good job.
Thank you.
If not, we will move on to the added point, which was the Fayetteville Public Schools television report from Susan Norton. I'm not sure who she sent that to.
Well, she sent it to me and to Lindsley, and I forwarded it to Fritz this afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basically for our television audience, it's a report on FayArt.tv, the education channel. She says that they've revamped television and multimedia services website to provide complete information about programming, and they also link all district videos that are currently run on Channel 217. Now the web and Channel 217 and UVerse 99 now mirror each other. There are also links on the website to other educational and news programming, and she provided images, screenshots of the new Fayetteville Public Schools television website. Any questions about her report?
One thing that's mentioned here that I think is worth noting is that if you visit the website, Fayar.net, and click the Fayar TV button, it says see the image of the mobile production bus and read all about how our students are using decommissioned school bus, now recommissioned to become the first Fayetteville Public School mobile production facility on wheels as a foundation for a real-world mobile television production and training program. The bus gives our high school students the opportunity and crew a production team for live events, for football games, basketball games. They even have the capability to do slow motion replays live. Visit the website to see more. That's kind of a cool deal.
That's cool.
No, Ken Kesey be jealous.
I'm jealous. I'd love to have a mobile production.
As we go back to their budget versus
Yeah, what kind of budget are they getting?
They're fortunate also to be able to take advantage of a lot of different grant opportunities that we don't have the capability to do.
I took television production in school, and I'll tell you, we did not have a mobile production facility.
I'd like to commend the educational franchise for giving us a report. It's a refreshing thing to see, even though I think their contractual obligation is probably annual.
Annual is their contractual obligation. But it's a very cooperative relationship, and we're really looking forward to the Fayetteville Public School having that channel 24/7.
Please express our appreciation.
Yes,
At least my
thank you,
appreciation.
Susan Norton.
All right, moving on, unless there are any other questions about that report or comments. A report from the Complaint Procedure Committee. I was chairman of that committee, I guess, and basically the committee met last week, and a motion was carried that we recommend passage of the draft complaint procedure that you'll all find in your packet available online.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the draft of the complaint procedure that was drafted by the city staff. Is there a second?
I second that.
Discussion, Mr. Chairman.
We have to have the motion and second to move into discussion.
Okay, you've got that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the.
Is there any discussion on
Thank you.
on procedure?
Well, I believe that important point is that this document was not read for the public's benefit. And I believe it's important that this information in this policy change procedure, if we're going to approve it as a board, should be read in full.
This is something that we discussed during the subcommittee meeting, and what we had determined was if the board does indeed decide to pass this complaint and feedback procedure, that we've got no issue reading it aloud on public television so that they realize what that procedure is. However, we want to make clear that at this time, all the subcommittee was doing was recommending it for the board's approval at this time.
Can we post it on our website?
Yes, sir. One of the things that this has been part of the meeting information material that has been posted on the meetings and agenda page as an upcoming event since I believe the 11th of August. It's been available for review, downloadable as a PDF. And also, as other documents become available, these for example, this one, if the board passes this and makes this the official procedure, it will be posted on the Fayetteville Government Television section of accessfayetteville.org and available to the public.
Has there been any feedback from the public on the policy that was posted?
I haven't received anything.
We've gone through this when we determined in the subcommittee meeting. This is very direct, and I think that the top portion pretty much sums it up, that any complaint regarding anything that could possibly fall under the umbrella of the Telecommunications Board or what they do would go through exactly what we've talked about before. Go through the city staff and then can be brought before the board. And it's what we've discussed several times. We've had this draft in our packets before, so once again, if there's any discussion about the existing policy, I know Mr. Bemis was at the meeting and we spoke briefly with him about it, and he didn't seem to have anything that he would change in the procedure itself, unless anybody on the board has any recommendations for change. Then I guess at this time there is a motion on the table to have it approved.
Well, I believe that we haven't had public comment on this motion, and that's appropriate.
It would be appropriate to have public comment if there is any.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Bemis made a trip from Rogers for that purpose.
I promise to keep it short. My understanding was that my complaints that have been before you since last August will be considered using this procedure. And is that a fair interpretation of what we had discussed previously?
If the complaints are still outstanding, I think that yes, they would at probably the next board meeting go through that policy.
I think it would be real useful for the board and for me if it were discussed using this as a framework as we discussed at the subcommittee meeting. That way we will see if each part of it applies to my complaint. As I mentioned to you, that my complaint is probably a little more general in its complaint structure than the normal ones are, meaning that my complaints are about policy and procedure. And actually, the way I wanted to commend you all on having the new organization chart for the center. That was one of my complaints, that we have never had a clear picture of how the city even saw this. And we have not had, because they've changed the public access, we need to have a clear picture like this of how it looks and of the educational channel. Seems to me that's just almost taken for granted that you would have that. And as you develop that, you would build in the new technologies. That is the IT, the part that IT is now doing. And many outfits have that now. They combine the two. So, because the image that the public sees is coming through often over the same fiber. And so those are the kinds of issues I'd like to see discussed and how you're going to manage that. I have a new iPad that I don't have a clue as to how to use it and how it will be used by the students. And for example, it's going to transform what we have in the education system, for example, as I see it anyway. And then the control of how those students would, I got on the new Wi-Fi here in this room tonight. I want to congratulate you on that. That's the first time that's been possible. Any person in the community can come in here and have that available to them as they hear what you're talking about. For example, I could have gone in and looked at what you have on there, this, and the other stuff. So those are the issues that I think we can discuss. I'm not mad at anybody. I think this is the best administration we've ever had in the city. I think that we have a lot of sticking points in the old policy and the old procedures that are going to have to be looked at very thoroughly. Some of them are tackled here. But the interrelations between this bunch that comes here, the 3 channels, are just one part of what we have in terms of telecommunications. I want emphasize that because I'm not gonna be, I'm, in full disclosure, I'm not a citizen of Fayetteville, and I'm not a resident of Fayetteville anymore.
Mr. Bemis, with all due respect, I understand what you're saying. We've got an actual open at the end of the agenda here as well for open for discussion. But at this time, on this complaint and feedback procedure, what we're trying to determine at this time is, are there any changes that we would like to make or the general public would like to suggest that we make to this policy, or not policy, rather this procedure, before we send it to be approved?
The answer to that, I guess, would be the same one I gave you at the subcommittee meeting. I think this is an excellent framework to discuss complaints that are down before you. And I think that any comments I would have will come out in that discussion. So I have no problem with this going forward, but I hope that you will be able to look at my complaints or any other complaints similar to mine using this new procedure, and we'll see how it tracks through the complete process.
Mr. Smith, just point of information, I'm new to the board. Are there any other complaints besides Mr. Bemis's that we need, or?
To my knowledge, Mr. Geisler, there's nothing outstanding, correct? No.
That's correct.
And before we lose you, Mr. Bemis, if this procedure is passed tonight by the board, would you be willing to start at the beginning, kind of a two-way street? Would you then resubmit it under the new guidelines for consideration by the board?
Yes, and I'll be happy to do that. Although I do not understand, the complaint is several pages, and that will be part of what we see, how difficult or how easy it is to submit a complaint and have it. I really like some of the parts of this where you're going to consider each complaint as a separate item on the agenda. I think that's an excellent one. It's not been done in the past. And so there'll be a lot of things that I think that we can discuss in terms of how a citizen, I'm looking at this as how a citizen moves through your complaint process.
Great. And
the request process. At one of your meetings that were discussed, you ought to have a way for people to compliment you and to make suggestions and enter into and interact with the boards so that they can take part in the development of new.
Well, that's kind of what this is wrapped up with. This is not only just complaint, but feedback as well. So we hope that this procedure will take care of the majority of that. So, but thank you for your input.
Well, thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to add to what you asked about the interaction with Mr. Bemis, if this is approved by the board, one of the things that I think would be helpful for me as we go forward, if this goes forward, is to as you said, things can be vague or they can be very specific. That if we can try to make specific questions or specific statements, I don't like X, or where is Y, or could you please describe to me the structure? I see, my issue is there's not a documented structure. Can you please describe that to me? That would be very helpful for me as the board's liaison for the city, if we're operating under this, to move forward with that. And I would just to...
I understand, and that's been a very difficult thing for me to do, and I think it would be difficult for any complainant or suggester or requester or whatever it's going to be.
I'm not sure I understand how that is. Most of the complaints that have been brought before this board are very concise, and it is laid out. This is my issue. This is the problem that I have with the board. This is the problem that I have with community access television. This is the issue that I have, and it's very drawn out and very laid out, which has allowed Mr. Geisler to go in and dissect those problems, whether it means contacting Cox Communications, whether it means bringing it to the board directly and asking for input that way. I think what Mr. Geisler is saying is we need some very specific and very direct points to be able to do that. And if you've got a complaint that's encompasses several things, maybe that complaint needs to be broken down into several different pieces as to, okay, this is this specific issue right here, how do we fix this? Or this specific issue, how do we fix this? Rather than getting, this one big massive complaint as to, I don't like this. Because if we start with that, it's, Mr. Geisler has to start with the complaint, and where does he begin? And so I believe what he's asking, correct me if I'm wrong, is make sure that we're directing our points as to this is something that we're unhappy with, or this is how we would like to fix this particular problem, or make those suggestions and maybe break them down so that it gives us some baby steps to work with as well.
I would agree with you 100%. I've had a difficult time doing that, really, because they're so general in the concept. We started through this in February, and Mr. Geisler submitted what he thought were my 4 main points. And they were included, but they weren't all of them. And they didn't cover them in the, for example, a priority or whatever, that I would see y'all discussing them. So one of the suggestions I would make is that you have a standing subcommittee. I guess I don't know how this is going to fit within your administrative rules. That's where this is going to be. And you know, that would look at the complaint and say, what Mr. Geisler said, we don't understand what your complaint is, then to have the complainant fix it, you know, and send it back. But not to have that in the hands of any single individual. In other words, it would be, the interpretations would be more than that of a single person or the staff, that it would include y'all in the process. That has been something that's very difficult.
Well, this current policy does allow that to happen, and if you're unsatisfied with what the city staff says, then at that point, then it does get moved on to the Telecom Board. At this point, we've had this open for discussion for almost 15 minutes. Is there any other, at this point, if there's not any other changes that you
as I say, no, I don't have any specific changes.
I think your issue would be addressed under point 1 of the 4 actions that could be taken by the board. You know, if it determined that once a complaint is brought to the full board that more investigation is required, we could appoint a subcommittee to deal with that specific issue, or you know, have a standing complaint committee. Right now, we don't have one, and until we need one, I don't think it would be entirely appropriate to just.
One of your complaints is that we didn't have a complaint procedure, and in turn what we did was we formed a complaint procedure subcommittee, and this is what we've gotten so far. So at this point, if you're happy with this document, I'd like to make sure we get it approved this evening.
I think we ought to move forward. I think you've made great progress. But what I wanted to determine is what should I do next to bring my complaints that have been for you in line with this procedure right now.
Well, you've got a copy of the procedure, correct?
Yeah.
And is there a question as to how your complaints would fall into that procedure?
Yes, and my complaints have already been filed. Do you want me to refile those?
This is past tonight, yes, refile them.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me ask this, because you've all seen it for a few months now. What parts of that could I ask you that are not clear in terms of the kind of process that you want to set up? That's where I think the subcommittee would be important, or someone to say, look, I don't understand what you mean, Mr. Bemis. And I said, well, maybe I didn't make that clear.
Well, that's what I understand the staff does first, is try to change it from a metaphysical discussion to a specific complaint.
That's true, and then I have problems with their interpretation of it.
Well,
Then when we discuss it in the full board, you have your opportunity
you can
to
elaborate
address
on
it
your
then.
position.
Okay, well, if you'd rather do it with the full board, that's fine, but that's where my complaint is right now.
I think it would have to come to the board first and then be referred to a subcommittee before anything could happen. It couldn't automatically go to a subcommittee without the board approval.
Okay, so the form that's on this procedure is what I should use to resubmit the complaint.
If the procedure is passed this evening, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm
And
sorry I'm holding you up on that.
I would assure the board that I attempt, in my role under this, that I would diligently attempt to state the complaint very succinctly, and as Mr. Davis said, if necessary, divided into several different points. So each point could be dealt with individually and focused on that, and to work with the complainant to ensure that that is what they meant, and that discussion can happen. And if we can't come to an agreement, then we can bring it to the full board and say, I've tried to state this in a way that I could go forward with it. You know, this complainant needs to have more clarification from the board at this point in time.
Anyway, I think That's good. We need to give Mr. Bemis some relief. He's been complaining for 3 or 4 years and can't get satisfaction. Now we have a policy to deal with it.
Is there any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second to pass the draft policy included in the packet. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Then the procedure is passed, and look forward to addressing Mr. Bemis' concerns under the new procedure next month. All right. The next point is committee reports. We already heard the report from the Complaint Procedure Committee. Anything from the Internet Subcommittee? Nothing? Next is reports on complaints.
I don't have any.
I'm having,
Okay.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Because we're gonna have a whole lot to talk about next meeting. Are there any agenda suggestions for the September 15th meeting? I assume Mr. Bemis' complaints will be on there. That'll be something that we'll get to later. If not, any announcements from the board or staff that hasn't been addressed
I
already?
don't have an announcement. I'd just like to commend the 2 directors that are here this evening on doing a good job and taking care of business. Everything seems to be functioning quite well, and that includes the education channel.
Yeah, that and Susan Norton's report. I think they're great.
I think the only thing I can think of is the Fayetteville Festival coming up September 1st. Celebration of diversity here in the city of Fayetteville. Don't know where or when. Fritz, do you know?
I have not received any
It's
information.
in conjunction with First Thursday, and it is on the 2 sides of the square that are not artists.
Okay.
So I think it's, if you start at the Bank of Fayetteville corner, you can engage.
Okay.
One of the things that I would like to point out with that, though, is that we do have a very, very well utilized message board on the government channel that is focused on governmental events and agendas and things like that. But we also have a message board function on Fayetteville Public Access Television that is open to any kind of non-commercial announcement for events or nonprofit organizations and other things that are happening. And I would encourage any member of the public to utilize that to announce their events and to announce things that might be something that's going on that the public might be interested in, and it's free, and as long as it's non-commercial, love to have it.
Okay.
paypublic.tv, you can upload your own artwork or fill out the form right there online.
Wow.
Anything further?
As long as it doesn't violate policy.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
All those in favor? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.